Hey guys, Mr. Happy here, and I wanted to do a video with my opinion, my thoughts on the latest step of the Zodiac Braves questline that just came out in 2.45. Now, I released my overview of what you needed to do for it a few days ago, and since then I've gotten my Yoichi bow, and I wanted to share my experience getting this bow with you guys, and compare it to the other 3 steps of the Zodiac questline, the Animus, Novus, and Nexus steps. So I'm going to give you my thoughts on the Zodiac, and then I'm going to put it into perspective how I came to my conclusion on this, just based on what you had to do for the other 3 steps as well. So the most recent step requires quite a few different things. It's not like the other ones where it was a pretty linear objective. The objectives are linear here, but they're sort of spread out. The 80,000 grand company seals to me was really easy. I had 50,000 saved up from leveling my ninja through fates, so that wasn't too big of a deal. People who regularly use them to buy ventures and things like that may have found it a little bit more troubling, but it's something that you can work on while working on the other objectives, and I'll get to that in a second. The next thing was 6,400 soldiery. I didn't think that was going to be that bad. That ended up being the worst part of the entire step for me. I ended up having every other objective done, and I still needed like 2,000 soldiery to go. Tried to get in as many first clear runs as possible, help people clear things just to get the soldiery to fund this kind of thing. The 16 dungeon Atmas, I've seen varying bits of luck, including myself. A lot of people have been getting shafted. I got shafted for 8 hours straight. I didn't get a single one for 8 hours. But overall, the step only took me 25 to 30 hours. So if not for that bad stroke of luck, I could have had it done pretty quick. But I know how people feel about RNG, especially how they felt about the Atmas. While these have a better drop rate, RNG is RNG. There's always going to be outliers. There's always going to be somebody who gets it done extraordinarily quick compared to everyone else, and there's always going to be somebody who gets it done extremely slow compared to everyone else. It's not their fault. That's just what happens when you roll the dice, and there's not much you can do about that. On top of that, you need 4 items that cost 100k each. That's not too much of an issue. And then you needed 8 3-star crafted items. A lot of people were worried about that step because, you know, crafters, when something's brand new, it's expensive on the market. I saw people claiming they had to buy the item for 17 million. One of the 8 items for 17 million. Since then, the prices have really gone down. I mean, day to day, I've been seeing them just dwindle and dwindle and dwindle as more and more people are capable of getting their hands on the materials section of the item. So you just got to hope that your crafters aren't throwing the cost of the materia it took them to get to the 3-star point on top of, you know, the actual crafting of the item. If you commission the item, if you get the materials, commission the item, that's probably the best way to go about it. But overall, all of this step seemed to be the easiest of all of the steps for me so far. And I'm going to put that into perspective in a certain way. The 16 dungeon Atmas, I farmed my Grand Company seals and my soldiery, almost all of it, like 3/4 of it, through doing those 16 dungeon Atmas. So even though I was working on multiple objectives at the same time, getting the soldiery and the seals through working on my dungeon Atmas ended up basically killing 3 birds with 1 stone. And it was better than, okay, I'm going to focus on the Grand Company seals, then I'm going to focus on the soldiery, then I'm going to focus on the dungeon Atmas. That would have drove me insane if you were forced to do them in that order. But because you were able to work on them all at once, it made things a lot quicker than they could have been otherwise. It was really all on those dungeon RNG drops. So the 4 100k items, not too big of a deal. I'm Goldsmith Desynthesis. I practically made that amount just desynthesizing items from doing the dungeon Atmas. If not, I probably made more than that. And the 8 3-star craft items, like I said, I commissioned them. I got each of them crafted pretty much for 40 to 50k, whatever the cost of the materials were. Obviously, this is going to vary from server to server, but given some time, it'll probably go down to a much more reasonable amount, especially the materials themselves. If you know a good 3-star or 4-star crafter, they don't even need HQ materials in order to make it. It's very simple for them to do with all NQ materials. So make some friends, talk to your free company, and you should be able to get it done a lot cheaper than some people are claiming it's going to cost. Now, I said I think this is the easiest step out of all of them, and I know that's gonna piss some people off. I mean, it's already pissed some people off when I was saying it on stream, but I'm gonna put into perspective what the other 3 steps asked you to do, especially when they first came out, because that's when most people did them. They've been nerfed since then, and obviously I have to make note of that, but these steps when they were first released were far worse than this step was when it was first released. Let's look at the very first step, the Animus step. I know what you're thinking, the first step is the Atma step. No, The Atma weapon is the first half of the Animus quest, because the Atma weapon is no different from your Zenith weapon in terms of statistical value. It might be 10 item levels higher, but it is in no way 10 item levels more efficient. So the 12 Atmas are part of this. Let's look at that. It took me 20 hours to do the 12 Atmas alone when it first came out. That's almost the amount of time it took me to do the entire final step. That's all I'm going to say. The 9 books on top of that, 1,500 mythology for each of those books when it first came out. To get the 13,500 mythology, you need to do 270 Brave Fox hard modes. And I'm not accounting for random amounts you may have gotten doing the books themselves or doing raids with your friend. Whatever. That's putting it into perspective. 270 Brave Fox hard modes. That was terrible. That was by far the worst thing. Worse than the Atmos for me. I can only do so many Brave Foxes a day before I want to just end it all. Now it's only 500 soldiery, not nearly as bad, but that is still a daunting amount for some people. On top of that, you had to do each book, and you couldn't buy the next book until you were done with the first book. So you might sometimes ended up getting too much mythology. You need to do 100 enemies easy. The 3 dungeons, sometimes easy. Some of the dungeons really did suck back then to do with your Atma weapon on. Also, if you were dead at the end of the dungeon and that cost you time, we're not even going to go into that. The 3 fates, probably the worst part of the entire thing, other than the actual farming of the currencies, because some of those fates, sometimes you'd show up and it would just be there and you'd be like, wow, I don't understand how people have trouble with this. And other times you'd wait there for 4 hours, then miss it, gotta wait for 4 more. Definitely the worst part. And the 3 leaves is just, that's not even worth mentioning. That part is easy. So, in total, 1,000 enemies, 27 more dungeons, 27 fates, and 27 leaves. That is the entire first step. That blows away the entire final step. Nowadays, it's nerfed. It's not as bad. But that step alone, just very, very, very bad when it first came out. Moving on to the Novus step, this step was really, like, very casual friendly, because if you tried to grind this out, you were absolutely going to go insane, because 800 myth per map when it first came out, 60,000 myth to finish this quest when it first came out, excluding the other ways to get it. When it first came out, the hunts weren't out yet, so that mythology wasn't that easy to come across. You would basically just do the 1 per day from the expert roulette, do your other roulettes for mythology bonuses, maybe do some fates if you're being a little bit masochistic after just finishing the Atma step, and you would hope you would get maybe 1 or 2 a day. It's about take about a month for you to get it, depending on how much you grinded. Then the hunts came out, and then you had the 200 allied seals. S ranks gave like 150 myth, A ranks gave like 80. That made the step a whole lot easier. It then became about the materia, the cost. The first 3 tiers, not so bad. You could get some bad losses, and some of them cost more, especially when it first came out. People jacked up the prices on tier 1 through 3 materia when it first came out. They've since leveled, but this is still an expensive step, especially considering that if you were somebody who was doing turn 9 at the time, this weapon was not yet as good as the turn 9 weapon. So it was really hard to justify. Well, it could be better depending on which job you were, but you know what I mean. It wasn't the highest item levels, what I'm trying to say. And then the Nexus step. Oh, I just need 2,000 lights, huh? For those of you who don't know, every time you completed a duty, there was a chance if you get, well, there wasn't a chance. You got light at the end of it. As long as you had the Novus weapon equipped, you got some light at the end of the dungeon. Feeble was worth 1, Gentle was worth 2, Bright was worth 4, etc., etc., etc. The average, what people will usually measure it by is 500 Garudas, which basically means 500 bright instances, Garuda being the quickest one of them all, and the one you would always hope was the first on the list. You could do 2,000 Cape Westwinds, 2,000 Fates, whatever, you can mix and match, but the average farm time is about a light a minute, and that's if you were being efficient, if you weren't solo queuing into instances and waiting a minute or 2 between them, doing Fates in between the queues. About a light a minute, it's about 33 hours of farming Garuda in turn 4, and that weighs heavily on your mind. So I'm comparing this step versus everything else, and you know what? I got to work together with people on my Zodiac weapon quest. We would encourage people, we'd make parties for fast queues and speedrunning all of the old dungeons, and right now there's no item level sync on those dungeons, so this step may even be harder to complete when 2.5 comes out, when they re-implement those item level syncs. Honestly, 6,400 soldiery compared to the 13,500 mythology, compared to the 500, at least, I did more than that, 500 instances you had to do for the Nexus. Between the 75 Alexandrite, I will take the 16 dungeon Atmas and the 6,400 soldiery almost any day over that. But those are just my thoughts. I'm going to be working on another one, unfortunately, my Ninja Nexus. The good news is that there are a few things that you can do. You can modify the stats of your Zodiac weapon. Don't worry, even if you pass the Nexus step, you can still reinfuse a Sphere Scroll in order to change the stats on your 125 weapon. You can work on the Nexus steps while you're working on all of the previous steps because they're repeatable quests, and you can just work on them. You can work on the Dungeon Atmas, you can work on the Grand Company Seals. The problem is that's only if you're working on a second Zodiac weapon, not if you're working on the first. So that is the part, sorry, I just hit my microphone. That is the part that could be a little bit daunting. So again, overall thoughts, this is the easiest step of them. And I say easy, very light. I'm not going to put emphasis on how quote-unquote easy it was. It's a grind. This whole weapon quest was a grind. It's going to continue to be a grind. If you can keep up with the grind, you get a nice looking weapon, and it's eventually going to be better than anything else you can obtain if you melded it properly. If not, you can always go back and change it later. I just recommend doing YOLO melds on your Novus just to get it done, just to work on the next steps. That step will go really fast nowadays. So let me know what you guys think of the latest Zodiac weapon quest line, the seals, the soldiery, the dungeon atmos, whatever. I'm done with my rant. Now I want to hear yours. Drop a comment in the section below so I can see what hardships you've had to go through on top of the ones that I had to go through. Anyway, guys, be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share. Just so you know, there are shirts on sale for a limited time until January 1st under the stream. Just want to let you guys know that shirts have been selling well, and just want to keep making sure that you're aware that I'm offering them. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching this video. Good luck out there on whatever step you're on, even if you're not on the Zodiac. If you're on the Nexus, Novus, Animus, whatever, good luck to you. Hopefully you can continue going. Drop by my stream if you're ever bored. And until next time, guys, take care.